I'd always thought betrayal would announce itself with fanfare. Slammed doors, screaming matches, dramatic confessions. But when it finally came, it was quiet, almost unassuming. Rachel stood in the kitchen, rinsing her wineglass under the faucet. The soft hum of our dishwasher filled the silence. She looked perfect as always, hair swept up in a loose bun, her navy blouse tucked neatly into high-waisted jeans. The faint scent of her Chanel perfume lingered in the air. "I'll be out late tonight," she said, not meeting my eyes. I paused, mid-swipe on my phone. "Late? It's a Wednesday." She shrugged, busying herself with the dishes. "It's just a thing at Ashley's. You know, one of her themed parties." Ashley, Rachel's work friend from the PR agency in downtown Boston. They'd bonded over their mutual love of overpriced lattes and boutique gym classes. But something about the way Rachel said her name this time sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. I forced a laugh. "Another themed party? What is it this time? Come dressed as your favorite cocktail?" Rachel chuckled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. She turned away, drying her hands with the monogrammed towel her sister had gifted us last Christmas. As she headed upstairs to change, Evelyn's words from earlier that week crept back into my mind. Evelyn, my widowed neighbor, had caught me taking out the trash and casually mentioned that Rachel had been looking quite busy lately. The way she said it, half concerned, half cryptic, had stuck with me. "She's probably just overcommit," I'd said, brushing it off. But now, sitting alone at the kitchen table, something didn't feel right. After Rachel left, I sat in silence, nursing the cold dregs of a Samuel Adams. The house felt emptier than usual, like it knew something I didn't. That's when I noticed her phone bill on the counter. Normally, it would have gone straight to the stack of unopened mail in the study, but for some reason, she'd left it out. My hand hovered over it. I knew Rachel's passcode. She'd given it to me years ago without hesitation. "In case you need it," she'd said, laughing at how old-fashioned I was for not sharing mine in return. I opened the bill. It took me less than 30 seconds to spot the anomaly. A flurry of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize. The activity was most intense during her work trips, one she always described as exhausting, but productive. My stomach tightened as I grabbed my phone and dialed Adam. "Mike? What's up, man?" Adam's voice was warm, familiar. We'd been best friends since college, roommates back when cheap beer and late-night pizza were all we needed to feel alive. "Adam," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I think Rachel's hiding something. Can you come over?" He was at my door 20 minutes later, a six-pack of Harpoon IPA in one hand and a look of concern in the other. Together, we sat at the dining table, poring over Rachel's phone records like detectives on a case. Adam scratched his scruffy beard, his brow furrowed. "This number," he said, pointing to the page. "It's way too frequent to be random. You sure you don't know who it is?" I shook my head. "Let's Google it," he suggested. The search didn't take long. The number belonged to Sean Carrington, a name that meant nothing to me until Adam's jaw dropped. "Dude, this guy's loaded. He owns Carrington Automotive, the chain with those obnoxious commercials. Drive the dream. Remember?" Of course I did. Those ads were impossible to miss, plastered all over New England. A slick, 20-something guy in a tailored suit, grinning next to luxury cars. My chest tightened. Sean wasn't just someone. He was someone. The next day, I confided in my sister Maggie. We met for coffee at Tat Bakery in Cambridge, her favorite spot. She was already waiting at a corner table, her signature iced latte in hand. "Okay," she said, pulling off her sunglasses and setting them on the table. "Spill." Maggie wasn't the type to coddle. As a single mom juggling a full-time job and 2 kids, she had no time for sugarcoating. I told her everything, Rachel's late-night plans, the phone bill, Sean Carrington. Maggie listened, her expression hardening with every word. "She's an idiot," she said flatly. "You? And Sean Carrington? This guy's a walking midlife crisis." I managed a weak laugh, but it didn't last. "You have to confront her," Maggie continued. "Don't let this fester. Trust me, it'll eat you alive." That night, I waited for Rachel to come home. Midnight came and went. At 1 a.m., I heard the familiar sound of her Audi pulling into the driveway. The front door creaked open, and Rachel stepped inside, her heels clicking against the hardwood. She froze when she saw me sitting in the dimly lit living room. "You're still up?" she asked, feigning nonchalance. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. Rachel hesitated, her hand tightening around her clutch. "Can it wait until morning?" "No," I said. "It can't." Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, I saw it. The guilt. The fear. "Who's Sean Carrington?" I asked, my tone deceptively soft. The color drained from her face. "Michael," she began, but her voice faltered. I stood, my chest pounding. "Don't lie to me, Rachel. Not after everything." For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. "Then," she sighed, setting her bag on the counter. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said quietly. "It just did." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to yell, to demand answers. But instead, I sat back down, staring at the woman I thought I knew. "How long?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. 6 months, she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. The betrayal was like a slow-motion car crash, horrific, inevitable, and impossible to look away from. That night, as Rachel retreated upstairs to sleep in the guest room, I sat alone, replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Evelyn's words echoed in the silence. Adam's look of concern. Maggie's no-nonsense advice. Somehow, they all knew what I'd been too blind to see. My marriage wasn't just broken. It was shattered. The morning after Rachel's confession felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's nightmare. She left the guest room before sunrise, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she descended the stairs. I hadn't slept. Instead, I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for over a decade, staring at the blank wall. By the time I reached the kitchen, Rachel was at the counter, scrolling through her phone like it was any other morning. Her hair was still neatly tied back, and she wore one of her tailored blouses, the kind she loved buying from J.Crew. The only thing different was her expression. Calm, detached, as if last night's confession was just another item on her to-do list. "We need to talk," I said, my voice hoarse. She sighed, setting her phone down but not meeting my eyes. "Michael, I'm late for work. Can this wait?" "No," I said firmly. "It can't." We stood across from each other in the kitchen, the light streaming in through the bay windows. Outside, Evelyn's hydrangeas swayed in the breeze, oblivious to the storm brewing inside. "So what now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Rachel crossed her arms. "I don't know what you want me to say. I was honest with you." "Honest?" I echoed, incredulous. "You've been lying to me for 6 months, Rachel. And now, what? You expect me to just move on?" Her face hardened. "I'm not going to apologize for wanting more, Michael." "More?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. What the hell does that even mean? We built a life together. A home. And you threw it away for what? Some rich guy with a flashy car? Rachel's jaw tightened. "It's not just about him. It's about us." I stared at her, waiting for her to elaborate. She exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding this in for years. "You're boring, Michael. Our life is boring. I wanted excitement, passion, something you clearly can't give me." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer, but she wasn't done. "You're so predictable," she continued, her tone venomous. "The same routine, the same everything. And in bed?" She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "God, Michael, do you even realize how frustrating it is to be with someone who can't satisfy me? Who won't even try to?" "Stop," I said, my voice low but trembling with anger. "You don't get to stand here and blame me for your choices." But she didn't stop. "Sean made me feel alive. He made me feel like a woman. With you, it's like I don't even exist. You're just there." Her words were sharp, each one slicing deeper than the last. I clenched my fists, my chest tightening with a mix of rage and humiliation. "Do you even hear yourself right now?" I asked, my voice rising. "You're justifying an affair by calling me, what? Boring? Flaccid?" She shrugged, as if it was all so simple. Maybe if you'd listened to me when I told you I wanted to try something new, something fun, we wouldn't be here." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging between us. Rachel grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'll stay at Ashley's for a while," she said over her shoulder. "That's it?" I asked, my voice cracking. "You're just leaving?" She stopped, her hand on the doorknob. "You'll thank me someday, Michael. It's not healthy. It hasn't been for a long time." And then she was gone. The sound of her Audi starting in the driveway was the final nail in the coffin. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, staring at the empty space where Rachel had stood. The house was quiet, painfully so. By midday, I called Maggie. She arrived within the hour, her SUV pulling into the driveway with the urgency of a paramedic. She stormed inside, her face a mix of anger and concern. "Where is she?" Maggie demanded, dropping her tote bag on the counter. "She left," I said flatly. Maggie's eyes softened. "Oh, Mike." She pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry. Over the next few hours, Maggie became my anchor. She made coffee, forced me to eat, and didn't shy away from the tough questions. "So, what's your plan?" she asked, sitting across from me at the table. I shrugged. "I don't know. Divorce, I guess." Maggie nodded, her expression resolute. "Good. She doesn't deserve you, Mike. And don't let her guilt you into thinking otherwise." Later that evening, Evelyn knocked on the door. She was holding a plate of cookies, her signature oatmeal raisin, and wearing one of her floral aprons. "I heard Rachel's car leave this morning," she said gently. "Thought you might need these." I invited her in, grateful for the company. Evelyn had always been kind, the sort of neighbor who watered your plants when you were out of town and brought soup when you were sick. We sat in the living room, the plate of cookies between us. "You know," Evelyn began, her voice warm but firm, "when my husband left me, I thought it was the end of the world. I blamed myself for years." She paused, her eyes distant. "But looking back, I see it for what it was, a blessing in disguise. It forced me to figure out who I was without him. And I promise you, Michael, you'll get there too." Her words, simple as they were, hit me in a way nothing else had. For the first time all day, I felt a glimmer of hope. As night fell, I sat alone in the living room, the events of the past 24 hours replaying in my mind. The pain was still raw, but Evelyn's words lingered. "You'll get there too." Rachel was gone, and so was the life I thought I'd have. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. I woke up to an empty house, but that wasn't new anymore. It had been a week since Rachel left, and in her absence, the silence had taken on a personality of its own. Loud, oppressive, and impossible to ignore. Every corner of the house was a reminder of her. The stack of travel guides on the coffee table, still bookmarked from the vacation to Santorini we never took. The blue vase she insisted on buying from that boutique in Portland, even though it was overpriced. The faint trace of her perfume lingering in the closet. The mornings were the hardest. That's when the full weight of her betrayal would hit me, fresh and unrelenting. I spent most of that week going through the motions. Teach, grade papers, avoid small talk in the teacher's lounge. At lunch, I'd hide in my classroom, pretending to be engrossed in lesson planning. Laura was the first to notice. She knocked softly on my classroom door one afternoon, carrying a Tupperware container. "Hey, Michael," she said, poking her head in. "Thought you might need this. Leftovers from last night, chicken and rice. Nothing fancy." Laura had always been thoughtful. She was one of those colleagues who remembered everyone's birthdays and made the best potluck dishes at staff meetings. "Thanks," I said, offering a weak smile. "I appreciate it." She hesitated, her brow furrowed. "You've been quiet lately. More than usual. Everything okay?" I opened my mouth to brush her off, but the concern in her eyes made me pause. "It's complicated," I admitted. Laura pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "I've got time," she said simply. Talking to Laura was easier than I expected. Maybe it was because she wasn't part of my personal life. Or maybe it was the way she listened, really listened, without interrupting or offering cliches. When I told her about Rachel's affair, she didn't gasp or pepper me with questions. She just nodded. her expression a mix of sympathy and quiet anger. "That's awful, Michael. I'm so sorry," she said. "But you don't have to carry this alone. Lean on people. Let them help you." Her words stayed with me long after she left. Later that evening, as I was sorting through the clutter in the study, I found Rachel's old laptop. It was buried under a pile of magazines, untouched since she got her new MacBook last year. A surge of curiosity, or maybe masochism, compelled me to power it on. I didn't expect to find much. Maybe a few old work files, photos, or half-finished manuscripts from the short-lived novelist phase Rachel went through after reading Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. But what I found was so much worse. Buried in her email drafts was an unsent message to Sean. Subject: "Can't wait for this weekend. Sean. Everything is booked. The penthouse suite at the W in New York, the spa treatments, the rooftop dinner. I can't stop thinking about the last time we were there, about you. About us. I'll make up some excuse for Michael. He's so gullible. It's almost sad." I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling. The betrayal I'd felt before was nothing compared to this. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd mocked me, belittled me, planned around me like I was some clueless obstacle. I called Maggie. She arrived within half an hour, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, her hair tied up in a messy bun. "Okay," she said, dropping her keys on the counter. "What happened now?" I showed her the email. Maggie read it silently, her jaw tightening with every line. When she finished, she let out a sharp breath. "That's it," she said. "You're filing for divorce. No more waiting, no more second-guessing." "I know," I said, my voice hollow. "And you're keeping this," she added, gesturing to the laptop. "It's evidence." The next day, I contacted Andrew, my lawyer. We met at his office in downtown Boston, a sleek, modern space that smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Andrew was a no-nonsense type, with sharp features and an even sharper mind. "So," he said, flipping through the paperwork I'd brought, "you're sure about this?" "Positive," I said, sliding Rachel's laptop across the desk. "There's more where that came from." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Infidelity will definitely work in your favor, especially if we can prove she used marital funds for her escapades. But it's going to be messy, Michael. You ready for that?" I nodded, though the knot in my stomach said otherwise. That evening, I stayed late at school, grading papers in my classroom. Laura stopped by again, this time with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Figured you could use this," she said, handing me one. "Thanks," I said, managing a small smile. We sat in companionable silence for a while, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the air. "You know," Laura said eventually, "you're stronger than you think." I looked at her, surprised. "I've seen it," she continued. "The way you handle your students, the way you show up even when things are hard. You're going to get through this, Michael. And when you do, you'll be better for it." Her words were simple, but they hit me in a way I hadn't expected. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel: hope. As I drove home that night, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, I realized that picking up the pieces wasn't going to be quick or easy. But I wasn't alone in this. I had Maggie, Evelyn, Andrew, and now, maybe even Laura. Rachel had taken a lot from me, but she hadn't taken everything. And that, I decided, was a start. The morning started with a box and a trash bag. Maggie had arrived early, coffee in hand, and her usual take-charge attitude in full swing. She didn't even wait for me to answer the door before she barged in and set the coffee on the counter. "Today, we're doing a cleanse," she announced, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "Marie Kondo on this whole damn house, starting with Rachel's crap." I stood in the doorway of the living room, still groggy, watching her fling open the hall closet. Rachel's scarves, jackets, and neatly stacked shoeboxes were the first to go, dumped into the box Maggie had brought. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I muttered, taking a sip of coffee. Maggie shot me a look. "You're more than ready. Trust me. Every time you look at her stuff, you're letting her live here rent-free, in your head and your house." She wasn't wrong. For the next few hours, we worked in silence, interrupted only by the occasional grunt from Maggie as she hauled Rachel's belongings out of closets and drawers. I tackled the bedroom closet, pulling out dresses I'd bought Rachel for anniversaries, heels she'd worn to fancy dinners, even the little black dress she wore the night I proposed. Each item felt like a punch to the gut. Maggie poked her head in. "Don't think. Just toss," she said. But when I pulled out the photo album from our honeymoon in Maui, I froze. I flipped through the pages, my chest tightening with every picture. Rachel's carefree smile as we hiked Haleakala. The way she held my hand during the sunset dinner cruise. For a moment, I couldn't reconcile that woman with the one who had torn my life apart. Maggie sat beside me, her tone softening. "You can't rewrite the past, Mike. But you don't have to carry it with you either." She gently closed the album and set it aside. "Box it up. Someday, if you want, you can look back. But not today." By late afternoon, the house looked different. The empty spaces where Rachel's things had been were jarring, but also oddly freeing. "You did good today," Maggie said, patting my shoulder. "This place already feels lighter." I nodded, though the weight in my chest hadn't fully lifted. That evening, Adam called. "Mike." "My guy," he said, his voice booming through the phone. "We're grabbing beers at Doyle's tonight. You're coming." I hesitated. Doyle's, the old Irish pub we'd frequented in our 20s, felt like another lifetime ago. "I don't know, Adam." "No excuses," he interrupted. "You've been cooped up for weeks. You need to get out. We'll talk about everything, or nothing. Just come." I sighed but relented. "Fine. One drink." Walking into Doyle's was like stepping back in time. The dark wood paneling, the smell of fried food, the faint buzz of a Celtics game playing on the TV above the bar. It was all comfortingly familiar. Adam waved me over to a table in the corner, where a few of our old college friends were already seated. "Look who decided to join the land of the living," Adam teased, sliding a Harpoon IPA toward me. I managed a laugh, the first real one in weeks. The night was exactly what I needed. Easy conversation, harmless ribbing, and just enough beer to take the edge off. At one point, Adam leaned over and said, "You know, Mike, you're going to be okay. It doesn't feel like it now, but you will be. And when you are, Rachel's going to realize she lost the best thing she ever had." His words, though slightly slurred, stuck with me. When I got home, the house felt different. Quieter, but not in the suffocating way it had before. Maggie had left a note on the counter. "Proud of you, little brother. One day at a time." I smiled, setting the note aside. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window and an unfamiliar sense of clarity. Rachel's belongings were gone. The house was still. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like it belonged to me again. There was still so much to figure out: divorce proceedings, rebuilding my life, finding myself. But as I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by nothing but possibility, I realized something. Letting go wasn't just about Rachel. It was about me. It was about making space for whatever came next. And for the first time, I was ready to see what that might be. It started with a text. "Michael, can we meet? I want to explain." I stared at the screen, my emotions swinging wildly between anger and disbelief. What was there to explain? She'd already said enough. But curiosity and maybe a flicker of misplaced hope made me reply. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Doyle's parking lot." Her response came almost instantly. "Thank you." I didn't sleep much that night. The idea of seeing Rachel again filled me with dread, anger, and, strangely, relief. It was time to put everything out in the open, to end this chapter on my terms. The next morning, I arrived early, parking my car near the edge of the lot. Doyle's was closed, so the area was empty except for the wind that rustled through the trees. Rachel pulled in minutes later, her white Audi gleaming in the sunlight. She stepped out wearing a beige trench coat and sunglasses, looking every bit like someone who wasn't about to have their life dismantled. "Michael," she began, taking off her sunglasses. Her voice was soft, tentative, like she was testing the waters. I stayed by my car, leaning against the hood. "What do you want, Rachel?" She hesitated, her hands fiddling with the strap of her purse. I wanted to explain, to apologize." I folded my arms. "Go ahead." For the next several minutes, Rachel talked. She told me how our marriage had become stifling, how she'd felt trapped and unseen. She painted herself as the victim of circumstance, a woman desperate for freedom and excitement. It wasn't about Sean, she said, her voice cracking. It was about me. I needed something different, something more. I let her talk, her words washing over me like static. When she finally stopped, I asked, "Are you done?" She blinked, surprised. "I just thought you should understand." "Understand?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Rachel, I understand perfectly. You lied. You cheated. You mocked me. And now you're standing here, expecting me to feel sorry for you?" Her face crumpled, but I didn't stop. "You don't get to rewrite history," I continued. "You don't get to make yourself the victim. You didn't want different or more. You wanted out, and you didn't have the guts to say it." Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. "You want to see what your choices cost?" I said, walking to the trunk of my car. I popped it open and pulled out the box Maggie and I had packed, a mess of Rachel's clothes, shoes, and knickknacks. Without a word, I dropped it on the ground in front of her. Rachel stared at the box, her eyes wide. "Michael, there's more," I said, opening the back seat. I pulled out our wedding album, or what was left of it. The once pristine book was now in pieces, its pages cut and torn. I threw it on top of the box. "That's your legacy," I said coldly. "That's all you left behind." She took a step back, her hand over her mouth. "You didn't have to do this." "No," I said. "You didn't have to do this." Rachel stood there for a moment, her composure unraveling. But I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. "I've already started the divorce proceedings," I said, my tone flat. "Andrew will be in touch. Don't contact me again unless it's through him." Rachel nodded faintly, tears streaking her face. "I'm sorry, Michael," she whispered. I didn't respond. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her and the box of broken memories behind. When I got home, Evelyn was waiting on her porch. She waved me over, and I joined her on the steps. "You look like a man who's been through the ringer," she said, handing me a cup of tea. I chuckled softly, taking a sip. The tea was strong and slightly sweet, the way she always made it. "I saw her," I admitted. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "And?" "She wanted to explain," I said, shaking my head. But it was just excuses. Same old Rachel, trying to twist things to make herself feel better. Evelyn nodded, her hands resting on her lap. People like that often do. It's easier to shift blame than to take responsibility. I stared at the horizon, the late morning sun casting long shadows over the yard. "I told her it's over," I said. "For good this time." Evelyn smiled gently. "Good. You deserve better, Michael. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can move on." Her words, simple and true, brought a strange sense of peace. "Let her actions be her burden," Evelyn continued. "You focus on you now, on what makes you happy." I nodded, the weight on my chest feeling a little lighter. As I walked back to my house, I glanced at the now empty spaces where Rachel's things had been. For the first time, they didn't feel like voids. They felt like beginnings. And for the first time, I was okay with that. The first step to rebuilding wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grand gesture or a sweeping epiphany. It was just a morning, a quiet, unremarkable morning, where I woke up and decided I was tired of feeling like a shadow of myself. I made a cup of coffee, stood in the kitchen, and stared out the window at the bare hydrangeas in Evelyn's yard. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the heavy weight of Rachel's absence pressing down on me. It was time to move forward. Later that day, Laura stopped by my classroom with her usual cheery knock. "Hey, Michael," she said, holding up a flyer. "We're doing a community showcase this Friday. Students, teachers, parents, the whole 9 yards. You should come." I looked at the flyer, the bold letters spelling out our stories, our community, in bright, inviting colors. "I don't know," I said, hesitating. "Crowds aren't really my thing right now." Laura rolled her eyes. "Michael, you're one of the best teachers at this school. The kids love you, the parents love you, and honestly, you could use a little positivity right now. Just come." Her smile was contagious, and before I knew it, I was nodding. The event was held in the gymnasium, transformed with string lights and student artwork. There was a stage at one end, where students performed everything from poetry readings to acoustic guitar covers of Taylor Swift songs. I arrived late, hoping to slip in unnoticed, but Laura spotted me almost immediately. "You made it," she said, dragging me to a seat near the front. As I sat and watched the students pour their hearts into their performances, something stirred in me. I'd always loved teaching, but in the chaos of the last few months, I'd lost sight of why. Watching these kids, so full of passion and potential, reminded me of the joy I'd found in helping others discover their voices. When it was over, Laura clapped me on the shoulder. "See? Worth it." I smiled. Yeah, it really was. The next day, Adam called with his usual enthusiasm. "Mike, I've got a brilliant idea. You're going to join my running group?" I laughed. "Running?" "Adam, the last time I ran was for a connecting flight in Chicago." "Exactly," he said. "That's why you need this. Fresh air, exercise, and a bunch of good people to hang out with. Trust me, you'll feel like a new man." I groaned but agreed. That Saturday, I met Adam and his group at the local park. They were an eclectic bunch, runners of all shapes, sizes, and skill levels. Adam introduced me to everyone, his energy contagious as always. The first mile was brutal. My legs burned. My lungs felt like they were on fire, and I was pretty sure I was dying. But by the second mile, I found a rhythm. As we jogged along the tree-lined path, Adam fell into step beside me. "See? Not so bad, right?" I grunted in response, too focused on not collapsing to argue. By the end of the run, I was exhausted but oddly invigorated. There was something satisfying about pushing my body, about proving to myself that I could still rise to a challenge. Over the next few weeks, I started to find a routine. I ran with Adam's group every Saturday, gradually building stamina and confidence. I spent more time at school, throwing myself into lesson planning and after-school programs. I even picked up an old hobby, woodworking, transforming the cluttered garage into a workspace where I could lose myself in the hum of sanders and the scent of sawdust. One evening, I was sanding a piece of oak for a bookshelf I decided to build when Evelyn wandered over, a basket of tomatoes from her garden in hand. "You've been busy," she said, eyeing the tools scattered across the garage. "Something like that," I replied, wiping sweat from my forehead. Evelyn set the basket down and smiled. "It's good to see. You're finding yourself again, Michael." I nodded, running a hand over the smooth wood. "Feels like it," I admitted. She patted my arm. "Keep at it. You're stronger than you know." One night after a long run, Adam and I grabbed beers at a local bar. He raised his glass, his grin wide. "To new beginnings," he said. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. As I took a sip, I realized I meant it. By the time the first snow of the season fell, my life looked completely different. The house felt like mine, the emptiness replaced with purpose. The ache of Rachel's betrayal was still there, but it had dulled, no longer consuming me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again, stronger, steadier, and ready for whatever came next. It started as one of Adam's spontaneous plans, a casual night out at the Copper Tap, a cozy gastropub tucked in the corner of downtown. "No excuses," he'd said over the phone. "Maggie's coming too. It's going to be great." By the time I arrived, Adam was already seated at a high-top table near the window, a pint of Guinness in front of him. Maggie sat across from him, sipping a glass of red wine. "Look who finally decided to show up," Maggie teased as I slid into the seat beside her. "Some of us have actual jobs," I shot back with a grin. The banter was easy, light, the kind of conversation that made me forget for a while how much my life had changed. Halfway through the evening, Adam nudged me, his eyes flicking toward the bar. "Hey, don't look now, but I think someone's checking you out." I rolled my eyes. Subtle. But curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced toward the bar. That's when I saw her. She was talking to the bartender, her dark hair pulled into a loose braid that rested over one shoulder. She wore a navy sweater and jeans, simple but effortlessly put together. Her laughter carried across the room, warm and genuine. "Her?" I asked, lowering my voice. Adam nodded, grinning. Yep. She's been glancing over here for the last 5 minutes. Maggie leaned in, clearly intrigued. Well, are you going to talk to her? No, I said quickly. Absolutely not. Maggie rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Mike. You're single. She's cute. What's the harm in saying hello? Before I could protest, the woman turned and caught me looking. She smiled, a small, shy smile that sent my heart into an unexpected flutter. Great, I muttered, sinking into my seat. Adam slapped my shoulder. Go talk to her, man. What's the worst that could happen? Against my better judgment, or maybe because of it, I stood and walked to the bar. She noticed me approaching and straightened, her smile widening. Hi, I said, feeling suddenly awkward. I'm Michael. Hannah, she said, offering her hand. We shook hands, and for a moment, I felt like a nervous teenager again. Mind if I join you? I asked, gesturing to the empty stool beside her. Not at all, she said, her tone easy and inviting. Hannah was a writer, a freelance journalist who'd moved to the area a few years ago. We talked about everything, books, travel, even the terrible cover band playing in the corner of the pub. Do they think screaming counts as singing? She joked, making me laugh harder than I had in months. As the night went on, I found myself relaxing, drawn in by her wit and the way her eyes lit up when she spoke. For the first time since Rachel, I felt a spark of something I thought I'd lost, genuine connection. When I returned to the table, Adam and Maggie were grinning like kids who'd gotten away with something. Well? Maggie asked. How'd it go? It was nice, I said, trying to play it cool. Nice? Adam echoed, smirking. Dude, you were at the bar for almost an hour. I shrugged, though I couldn't help the small smile tugging at my lips. She's smart, funny, easy to talk to. Maggie raised an eyebrow. And I gave her my number, I admitted. Adam hooped, earning a few glares from nearby tables. Maggie just leaned back in her chair, a smug smile on her face. Good, she said. It's about time. The next day, Evelyn stopped by with a plate of cookies and her usual calming presence. I heard you were out last night, she said, setting the plate on the counter. How'd you know that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Evelyn smiled slyly. Word gets around. I also heard you met someone. I laughed. Let me guess, Maggie? She nodded, settling into a chair. She's proud of you, you know. So am I. I sat across from her, fiddling with the edge of the table. It's just hard, trusting someone again after everything that happened. Evelyn reached across the table, placing a hand on mine. Michael, life isn't about avoiding risks. It's about taking them anyway and learning to trust yourself. You deserve to be happy. Her words, simple but profound, stuck with me long after she left. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text. Hannah. Hey, Michael. It's Hannah. I had a great time last night. Would love to do it again sometime. I stared at the screen, a small smile spreading across my face. Michael, I'd like that too. For the first time in a long time, I felt something stir deep inside me, hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could start again. The divorce papers arrived on a crisp Thursday morning, slid neatly into a plain white envelope. There was no drama, no theatrics, just a courier dropping them on my porch like they were any other delivery. I stood there for a moment, staring at the envelope in my hands. It felt heavier than it looked, as if it carried the weight of the past 10 years. I walked to the kitchen, set the envelope on the table, and poured myself a cup of coffee. When I finally opened it, I read each line carefully, my eyes lingering on the finality of the words, dissolution of marriage. It was done. That evening, Adam came over, his way of making sure I didn't spend the night wallowing. He brought pizza and beer, a tradition that dated back to our college days. To freedom, he said, raising his bottle in a mock toast. I smirked. Freedom doesn't feel quite as great as you think it does. Not yet, he said, taking a swig. But give it time. You're rebuilding, Mike. And you're doing a damn good job. I nodded, though his words felt distant. Over the next few days, I kept busy. I threw myself into teaching, volunteering to help with the school's new after-hours tutoring program. I finished the bookshelf I'd been building in the garage, filling it with my favorite novels and a few old keepsakes. Each small step felt like progress, a way to reclaim parts of myself I'd lost during my marriage. Hannah and I had been texting, each conversation light and easy. She had a way of making me laugh, even over text, and I found myself looking forward to hearing from her. One evening, she suggested we meet for coffee. I hesitated for a moment, then typed back, "Sounds great. How about Sunday afternoon?" When Sunday arrived, I met her at a local cafe, a quaint place with mismatched furniture and the smell of fresh pastries wafting through the air. Hannah greeted me with a warm smile, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Hey," she said, standing to hug me. "Hey," I replied, surprised by how natural it felt. We spent the next hour talking, sharing stories about our jobs, our favorite books, even the awkward moments of our lives. "Why teaching?" she asked at one point, genuinely curious. I thought for a moment. Because I like helping people find their way. There's nothing better than seeing a kid light up when they finally get it, when they realize they're capable of more than they thought. She smiled. "I get that. Writing's similar for me. It's like piecing together a puzzle, figuring out how to tell the story in a way that really connects with people." Her words resonated with me. For the first time, I felt like someone really understood the things that mattered to me. When I got home, Maggie stopped by to drop off a casserole. "You're really leaning into the single mom energy," I joked, accepting the dish. She rolled her eyes. "I can take it back, you know." I laughed, setting the casserole on the counter. "How was the date?" she asked, leaning against the island. "It wasn't a date," I said quickly. Maggie raised an eyebrow. "Uh-huh. So, did this not date go well?" I sighed, unable to stop the small smile that crept onto my face. "Yeah, it went really well." Maggie smiled, her expression softening. "Good. You deserve it, Mike. And don't overthink it, okay? Just let it happen." She paused, then added, "You know, after Dave left, I thought I'd never be happy again. But eventually, I realized it wasn't about finding someone else. It was about finding me. You're doing that too, and I'm proud of you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. "Thanks, Maggie," I said quietly. The next few weeks were a blur of small, meaningful moments. Hannah and I continued to see each other, each meeting easier than the last. We went for walks, grabbed coffee, and even caught a matinee screening of a documentary about local artists. There was no rush, no pressure, just the steady growth of something real. At the same time, I started to notice changes in myself. I felt lighter, more confident. My runs with Adam became easier, and I started setting small personal goals. At school, I found myself more present, more connected with my students. Evelyn noticed the change too. "You look different," she said one evening as we sat on her porch. "Happier." "I think I am," I admitted. She nodded, her eyes crinkling with warmth. "It suits you, Michael. Keep moving forward. You're on the right path." One evening, as I sat in the garage finishing a small end table, I thought about how far I'd come. The pain of Rachel's betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. I'd rebuilt my life piece by piece, carving out space for the things and people that truly mattered. As I smoothed the final edge of the table, I realized something. Happiness wasn't something you stumbled upon. It was something you built. And for the first time in years, I was ready to keep building. The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows, casting a golden glow over the breakfast table. I sat there, sipping coffee from a chipped mug I couldn't bring myself to replace. Across from me, Hannah was cutting up strawberries for our daughter, Lily, who sat in her high chair, babbling happily. 5 years. It felt like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye. Life had changed in ways I never could have imagined. After Rachel left, I thought I would spend the rest of my life dragging the weight of that betrayal behind me. But somehow, with time, effort, and the support of the people around me, I'd found a way to let go. Now, my days were filled with the hum of a life well lived. I still taught at the same school, though my role had expanded to include mentoring new teachers and running a creative writing program for students. The satisfaction I felt in helping others had only grown, and it was no longer tinged with the self-doubt that used to haunt me. Hannah had become my partner in every sense of the word. From quiet evenings spent reading in the living room to chaotic mornings wrangling Lily into her favorite sunflower print dress, she made the ordinary feel extraordinary. "Daddy, look." Lily's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She was holding up a half-eaten strawberry, grinning proudly. "Wow, that's a good one," I said, reaching over to ruffle her curly hair. Hannah smiled at me, her eyes sparkling in that way they always did when she caught me marveling at our daughter. "She's got your stubbornness, you know," she teased. "And your charm," I replied, earning a laugh. Later that day, Evelyn stopped by. At 84, she was as sharp and spry as ever, though she walked a little slower now and used a cane. She settled into her favorite chair on the porch, and I brought her a glass of iced tea. Lily was napping, giving us a rare moment of quiet. "You've come a long way, Michael," she said, her voice warm and steady. I sat beside her, nodding. "I have." Evelyn smiled, her gaze distant as if she were remembering her own journey. "I told you once that happiness is worth the risk. And look at you now." Her words filled me with a quiet pride. "You were right," I said. "It wasn't easy, but it was worth it." She reached over, patting my hand. "It always is, Michael. It always is." That night, after we'd tucked Lily into bed, I found myself in the garage, sanding a small stool I was making for her. Hannah walked in, leaning against the doorframe. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled, setting the sandpaper down. "Yeah, just thinking about how far we've come." She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me. "We've got a good life, Michael." "We do," I agreed, holding her tightly. As for Rachel, I'd heard bits and pieces over the years. A friend of Maggie's had mentioned she'd moved to a smaller city, bouncing between jobs and relationships. The last I heard, she was still searching for what, I didn't know. Satisfaction? Stability? Herself? I didn't think about her much anymore. She was a part of my past, a lesson I'd learned and left behind. 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined standing where I was now, married to someone who truly saw me, raising a bright, beautiful little girl, and feeling content in a way I hadn't thought possible. As I carried the finished stool into the house that night, I realized something. Life wasn't about the endings. It was about the beginnings. And I was grateful, every single day, for mine. How do you rebuild your life and yourself after betrayal shatters everything you thought you knew? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling so you never miss an update on more real-life stories. And as always, see you in the next video.